All right, today we turn our attention to allegory, a concept that you should remember from last year associated with freshman studies. Astasia, what do you remember of allegory from last year? Something simple. You were here last year at Southview? Okay, so all freshman English teachers do this. With which novel did you learn the concept of allegory? Yes, you do. You're just on the spotlight and suddenly there goes blank. Somebody help her out. Joey. Animal Farm. Ah, now. Animal Farm is an allegory, Astasia. Can you tell me what that meant for Animal Farm? No. Oh, Astasia. I believe you can, but you know what? I think you also get freaked out by having to speak in front of people, so I'll let you off the hook. Sam. This one particularly did relate to historical events. So each pig represented somebody in history. Each character represented somebody else. Or, in the case of Boxer, they didn't represent a specific identity. They represented what? A class. This is allegory. Okay? So, I'll tell you one thing right now. Allegories do not always present a one-to-one connection between a person and a historical event or historical person. There's not always a one-to-one like Napoleon equals Stalin. That does not always work in an allegory, and it's not working in Lord of the Flies. If that's the case, some of you are looking at it right now, but what's the definition of allegory? In your own words, yeah, Clay. That is absolutely true. A story that can be read on multiple levels. And in literature, we're talking about two levels primarily. Do you know what they're called?
I used to.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
One the Bible?
No, two levels. Two levels in which you can read stories. A Bible's not a level. Yes, Joey.
Literal?
Yes, and what's the antonym of literal?
Allegorical.
No. What else is literal or? Tony?
Metaphorical?
No. Metaphorical is wrong for the same reason allegorical is wrong. Thank you. See, Astasia? There you go. Literal versus figurative. See, by throwing our brains together, eventually we find very precise and very correct answers.
Eventually we find an answer we learned last year.
Absolutely. But you are about to advance the knowledge that you learned last year. That's why you're here in sophomore English. Clay says properly that an allegory is a story that you can read on multiple levels. The two levels that we primarily focus on are the literal and the figurative. Literally, Boxer is a horse. Figuratively, Boxer is what? The working classes. How do you know that? Ryan?
Because he's the one that is always working.
Because he's always working. It's not that subtle, is it, folks? As somebody told me last night, it's about as subtle as a shovel upside the head. If you don't get it, you're not reading.
It explains that Boxer basically, he does what the leader says, and he just believes him wholeheartedly, and he works his hardest.
Pause, Abby, you're running a little bit too fast. Here's what you've got there. You've got two levels of allegory. One is what Boxer represents. He represents the working classes. The second level is what Orwell is saying about the working classes. He's saying they're relatively mindless, they're loyal, they'll work until they die. So Orwell is using Boxer to make his political comment on the working classes, what they're like. Golding is doing something very similar with Lord of the Flies. Similar, not identical. Here's your definition for allegory. A story in which characters and plot events represent other ideas or people. The characters and plot events do not try to stand on their own as real. Boxer is not real. I know you're thinking, well, duh, Mr. Clarkson, he's a fictional character. Yes, but sometimes novelists write fictional characters who are very, very real, who you could imagine meeting. No, you can't, because horses don't talk.
Let me believe.
No. I am here to crush illusions and cheap beliefs.
So then you don't believe that.
Get reborn into another life.
All right, all right.
If you kill yourself, you might come back alive.
Okay, no suicide.
If somebody else kills you.
No homicide. Come on, Kevin. You're not.
You accidentally drowned.
You're not improving the situation here. Shh. Stop. Understand what I mean, because it's a sophisticated statement about literature, one that you've probably never encountered before. Some characters in literature have psychological reality to them. They behave in ways that real people do. Some authors are very good at constructing these characters, and you know what? They're relatively unpredictable. And you'll hear some authors talk about characters in the sense that they're real. Like, I don't know what this character is going to do. I love finding out what this character will do. And you might be looking at that author saying, what do you mean you love finding out what the character is going to do? You're writing. How do you mean that? Some authors believe, and I believe these authors are correct, that they set up some rules for their character. They build that character, and then that character obeys those rules. Rules of psychology, rules of behavioral conditioning, rules of emotional truth, what have you. They have a reality to themselves. I'm trying to think of excellent examples of real characters, probably in Ordinary People. Many of you read Ordinary People last year. Not all of you, but many of you. I believe that Connie is one of those characters. Connie is a character who has reality. Depth, complexity, contradiction, reality. Boxer's not a real character. Boxer is not a real character. He is a tool used for one and only one purpose, for Orwell to describe the working classes. Now, in Allegory, you have several of these characters. Characters or plot events. What have I excluded by only listing characters or plot events? Setting, true. The theme, mood, true. But what else can have figurative significance that I have excluded? Objects, thank you. Brian, if I have an object with figurative significance, what's it called?
Symbol.
Very good. Objects are symbols. I am not dealing with symbols right now. I'll deal with symbols next week. Today we are not talking about symbols. Today we are talking about allegory. Allegory focuses on characters and plot events. And in Golding's allegory, you are focusing on 4 characters, the 4 that we discussed earlier this week. Ralph, Jack, Piggy, and Simon. Simon's a bit difficult, but Piggy and Jack are very easy. Ralph's a little bit of a midway point. A little bit difficult, a little bit easy. And when I say difficult or easy, what do I mean? Determining what this boy represents, like Boxer represents the working classes, and then understanding, excuse me, understanding what Golding is saying about that thing he represents. Let me back up by referring back to what Abby was talking about. Boxer represents the working classes. Abby, what is the strength of the working classes according to Orwell? Think about Boxer.
He works until he dies. Like, he's really loyal. He doesn't really pay attention to true logic. He just believes whatever the other says.
Hold on, use mixed strength and weakness. Strength is that he's loyal and hardworking, right?
Yeah.
So there's a nobility there, isn't there? What's the weakness?
He doesn't really believe in, like he doesn't think about logic. He just goes with whatever the leader says.
Gullible,
Yeah.
moldable, and doesn't pay attention to intelligence. Does anybody remember a specific example of Boxer trying to actually learn something? What happens with the alphabet? It was 3, I believe, but you're correct, Christy. He remembers ABC. He memorizes them, ABC. And do any of you have a book with pictures in it where he's carving out A, B, and C with his hoof? Some editions have pictures. And then when he memorizes D, E, and F, he forgets A, B, and C. That's a weakness, not of Boxer, but according to Orwell, of the working classes. That the working classes are pretty unintelligent. I know. I know.